Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books presents Dedicated to Dell by Heather Mackinnon. Narrated by Cassandra, Myles, and Thom. Chapter 1. Dell.
Excuse me, could I ask you for a favor?
I froze as his deep, gravelly voice washed over me. It was melodic, but also harsh in a way that made me want to hear him sing. I'd been listening to his mumbled conversation with the guy next to him for the past hour while I waited for my turn to perform. But hearing it out loud and directed at me was so different, yet somehow familiar. Like I'd heard it 1,000 times before when I knew I'd never met him. I turned to the voice and found a set of brilliant hazel eyes pointed right at me. The man smiled, his teeth bright next to the dark hair on his face. I stood there staring as I tried to figure out how a man could be too scruffy to be beautiful. Or maybe too beautiful to be scruffy. But damn. He cleared his throat and I blinked at him. Huh? His smile got wider.
I was hoping I could ask you for a favor.
His accent was thick, and his words dripped through me like honey. What's that? I finally said. He sat back on his stool and nodded to the drink in his hand.
My buddy here is trying to tell me that his craft beer is better than my PBR. I was hoping you could set him straight.
I shook my head in an effort to clear some of the haze. When I got a look at the bottles they were holding, I smirked. Well, I'm really more of a vodka Red Bull girl myself, but that's a wicked weed IPA he's got. You really can't do better than that here in Nashville. The man's smile was still wide as the guy behind him snorted.
Told you,
he grumbled, but the man didn't seem to hear. Instead, he lifted his hand and called for the bartender.
Can I get a vodka Red Bull, please?
He asked, eyes still on me. I pursed my lips as the guy behind the bar poured my drink and slid it over. That might be the most creative way anyone's ever bought me a drink before, I said as I took a sip. His eyes lit up even brighter.
I'll take creative. I'm Theo,
he said, and extended a hand toward me.
What's your name?
Dell, I said as I reached for him. The moment our fingers touched, a lightning bolt of heat shot through my body. The hair on my arms stood on end, and my skin sizzled as he wrapped his hand around mine.
Nice to meet you, Dell.
He had to feel the buzzing, right? This low-level vibration that started where he was still touching me and spread to every inch of my body. I shook my head again as I pulled my hand out of his. Thanks for the drink, Theo. I picked it up and took another swallow, hoping he didn't notice the way I was still shaken.
I was surprised to hear you prefer vodka Red Bull to moonshine, he continued.
He was referring to the alcohol werewolves preferred to drink. It was much stronger than human liquor, which did next to nothing for us. This meant he was a werewolf, and he knew I was one too. I raised my brows and stared at him over my glass as I took another long sip. I like to have a clear head when I perform.
That's rare for a musician.
I shrugged and set the drink down. Theo nodded toward the stage.
So, you're auditioning today?
I glanced to the front of the room as the next act stepped up. My stomach knotted deep inside, but instead of causing fear, all it did was make me more anxious to get out there myself. This gig was a big deal, maybe the biggest deal of my life. Apparently, a popular country rock band from Nashville was in town on tour and lost their opening act. They were holding emergency auditions for a replacement, and I wanted to be it. Yeah, it should be my turn soon. What about you? He smiled again, and my heart slammed against my ribcage.
I've already tried out.
Damn it. I was 10 minutes late because I'd misplaced my keys again, and I guess I missed his performance. I was thankful I hadn't lost my turn, but now I regretted not catching his set. How'd you do? His grin got even wider, his eyes damn near sparkling at me.
I killed it.
Strangely, his cockiness wasn't a turnoff like it should have been. I've been around enough musicians to have tons of experience with big-headed wannabe rock stars. For some reason, Theo's arrogance only made me laugh. Good for you.
What are you performing?
I shrugged. Not sure yet. Theo chuckled, the sound full of disbelief.
You came to an audition and you don't even know what you're playing?
I shrugged again. Yeah, it's kinda how I work. If I'm performing for a crowd, I usually make a set list in advance. But if I'm trying out for something, I don't make up my mind about what I'm singing until right before I go on stage. His smile lingered as he shook his head back and forth.
Why?
I pursed my lips as I tried to put my thoughts into words. It's like I have to feel it, you know? I need to be at my absolute best, so I sing whatever's on my mind and in my soul at that moment. I sighed as I took another sip of my drink. It's never the same song twice, and it's always a surprise to me, too. Theo laughed.
That's crazy.
Guess I'm crazy, then. His strange colored eyes flashed with humor, but before he could say anything else, the next act started playing, and we both turned to watch. The Asheville music scene was small, so of course I recognized the duo on stage. They were playing a Florida Georgia Line song, and my hips swayed without my permission. Out of the corner of my eye, I watched Theo inch closer, his eyes on me again.
You like this song?
I like almost all songs.
What about the band you're auditioning to open for? Do you like their songs?
I don't know them that well, but I like the one they have on the radio right now. In fact, it had been stuck in my head all week because the local stations had it on repeat. He seemed to like that answer because he took another step closer and then turned to watch the guys performing. When they were done, we all clapped and they left the stage.
What did you think?
Theo asked. Somehow he'd gotten closer. Now I could smell the hops on his breath. Beneath that, his true scent. It was woody cedar and the metallic scent of steel, and I instantly knew he was a guitarist. They did great.
But
I frowned at him. How do you know there's a but?
a good musician knows there's always something that can be better, and a great musician usually knows what it is.
His smile was so wide as he stared at me, and I honestly forgot to breathe for a moment. I dragged some precious oxygen back into my lungs. How do you know I'm a good musician?
Just a hunch,
he said with a wink. A simple flick of his eyelid shouldn't have made my heart pound like that, but it did. I cleared my throat and looked away. I had to, if I was going to get a coherent sentence out. They work well together and always do a great job, but I think they could have picked a song that fit them better.
Like what?
I turned to give him an exasperated look, and he just laughed.
I've got a feeling you already know what they should have sang. Am I wrong?
I licked my lips, and his eyes darted to my mouth. I saw them perform Stay a Little Longer by the Brothers Osborne once, and it was amazing. Theo's bright eyes met mine again.
That's a good song.
I know, and those guys slayed it last time. He smiled at me again, and it was like every time he did that, he got more good-looking.
What about this girl?
He asked, with another nod at the stage. I tore my gaze away from his to glance at the front of the room. When I did, I found one of my least favorite people in Nashville. Oh, I deadpanned. That's Britt Samuel. She's good. Theo laughed so hard, a few people turned to stare at us. He stifled his chuckles and took another step closer, lowering his voice more.
You're an awful liar.
I frowned up at him, willing his woodsy scent to stop clouding my thoughts. I'm not lying. She is good.
Okay, then where's the but?
I rolled my eyes. There's no but.
You're lying again. A soft growl rumbled out of my mouth, and Theo had to press his lips together to hold back another laugh. Fine, I said. She over-sings. She's usually a half-beat too slow, and she's a bitch, okay? His eyes were bright with humor, and I can tell it was taking an immense effort for him to hold it in. Why is she a bitch? He murmured, moving even closer as our conversation became more private. I sighed. She thinks there's only room for one female singer-songwriter in Nashville, and she's sure it should be her. Is she right? I turned to him with a glare, and he held up his arms. About there only being enough room for one of you here, he explained, his lips twitching with another grin. The fat flew right out of me, and my shoulders slumped. I don't know, maybe. It does kind of seem like any time we're both up for something, they always pick me or her, and never both. That truth was a tough pill to swallow, especially when all I had to wash it down with was the hopelessness of my situation. Because I wasn't like Britt. I never wanted to be the most popular female artist in the city. I wanted so much more. Asheville would never be enough for me. I'd never learn enough, grow enough, accomplish enough staying here. I needed to spread my wings and fly far away from this place. But there were 4 reasons I never did, and each one of them started with one of my siblings. Hell, now I'd have to add Ellie into the mix, and her kids, and Callie's kids. And shit, now B was having a whole fucking litter. All those reasons added up to too many excuses to stay. But let me guess, they mostly picked you? He asked after a quiet moment, breaking me out of my thoughts. My eyes darted to his and away before he could read the truth, but I guess I wasn't fast enough. I thought so, he said, his deep voice even closer than before. I fought off a shiver as I took a half-step back and turned toward the stage. Britt was just getting ready to start, and I wanted to watch out of respect, if nothing else. She predictably chose a big Shania Twain ballad and just barely hung on to every note. It was honestly kind of hard to watch. My skin began buzzing again as Theo leaned close, his hard chest bumping into my arm. You're right. You're so much better than her. I bit my lips to keep the smile off them as I turned to him. You've never heard me play. He leaned back and shrugged. Call it a hunch. You seem to have a lot of those. His grin was back and as wide as ever. With you? Yeah. My stomach pinched sharply as he stared at me with his fathomless hazel eyes that seemed to be every shade possible. Blue, green, brown, amber, turquoise. I couldn't just focus on one color because they all mixed so seamlessly. I finally ripped my gaze away from his in time to watch Britt take an exaggerated bow for the smattering of applause she received. I might have felt bad for her, but she didn't even seem to notice as she strutted off the stage. Theo leaned in to say something else, but his voice was drowned out by another. Del McCoy, someone announced over the PA system, and my heart beat hard once before taking off at a sprint. That's me, I muttered to Theo as I tossed back the rest of my drink and grabbed my things. Do you know what you're singing yet? He asked, with what sounded like equal parts humor and worry in his tone. I shrugged and turned to head for the stage. I'll figure it out, I called over my shoulder. I didn't bother taking a last look because I knew it would just distract me. Right now, I needed to tune into the multitude of songs swirling around my head and figure out which one was loudest, which one had the most to say to me. This was an important audition, and the fact that I still hadn't figured out what I was singing had my palms sweating despite what I'd said to Theo. I wiped them against my jeans as discreetly as I could as I made my way through the venue. Excuse me, I muttered as I skirted past a group of people, my head still in snarls. Why was I struggling so much to pick a song today?
It was never this hard for me. I usually woke up the morning of an audition already knowing what I wanted to sing, but my muses had been strangely silent all day. I dug deep for what I was feeling most connected to, but all I kept seeing were Theo's hazel eyes. It was like he'd eclipsed my day before I'd even met him. Before I knew it, I'd reached the stairs. I'd tried to pay attention to where I was walking, because the last thing I wanted to do was trip on my way up. But just like I'd manifested it, the toe of my boot got caught on the top step, and I went stumbling forward. I caught myself with a chuckle and threw back my shoulders before heading toward the center of the stage. When I reached the microphone, I stared out into the crowd and gave them a grin. "There's something wrong with your stairs." The tiny crowd roared with laughter, and I smiled harder at them. The feeling that came with being on stage raced through my veins, invigorating me and focusing me all at once. This was where I was born to be. This was what I was born to do. Even though I knew that with every fiber of my being, it was easy to doubt, especially after a string of things not going my way. But when I got the chance to perform, even for just a few people, it was enough to remind me. Most of the people watching were obscured by darkness, but I knew exactly where to find him. Without permission, my eyes started scanning the crowd, looking for one shadow in particular. Theo was still leaning against the bar where I left him, his eyes shining bright even from this far away. My smile grew just for him before I turned to pull out my guitar. The songs in my head were still spinning around, but there was one that slowed down each time it passed. It wasn't one of my stronger songs, but it was fun and upbeat, and I knew I could make it sound great acoustic. I also knew the reason it stuck out was standing across the room and hadn't taken his eyes off me. "Fuck it," I mumbled, before turning around and approaching the microphone again. "Hey, y'all, this is Blank Space."
Chapter 2. Theo. Dale McCoy. Her name rang through the venue like it had been ringing in my head since I heard it yesterday. Our manager, Mason, mentioned there was a female werewolf auditioning, and we'd all been hoping she was a good enough fit and we could take her on the road. It just made things easier when we toured with other wolves. What I got was so much more. "That's me," she said before bringing her drink to those bright red lips and draining the rest. I watched, entranced, as she calmly collected her things. It felt like our time was running out, and I was anxious to hold on to every precious second. "Do you know what you're singing yet?" She shrugged, her crimson lips curling with a grin before she turned away. "I'll figure it out," she said over her shoulder as she headed toward the stage. I watched her ass sway back and forth in her skin-tight jeans, not giving a single shit if I got caught staring. "You need to close your mouth before you drool more." I snapped my mouth shut and wiped my chin as I turned to my bandmate. "But did you fucking see her? Holy shit." Roman shrugged, tattooed fingers gripping his glass of whiskey. "Decent tits, fat ass, pink hair." He listed her features like he was reading a grocery list. "Been there, fuck that." The rage was swift and so unexpected it shocked me silent. When the urge to knock him the fuck out was finally under control, I said, "You don't know her." My voice was soft, which should have tipped him off. It didn't. "Neither do you," he scoffed. My hands fisted at my sides as tiny trembles started to ripple through my body. "I know she's more than tits and an ass," I growled. The fucker had the nerve to throw his head back and laugh. His words were like a cold bucket of water over my head. How was she under my skin like that already? Why was I already defending her to my best friend? Why did everything feel so different with her? I shook my head. "Just shut the fuck up and mind your business, Roman." He laughed again, and the urge to punch him was so strong I had to grit my teeth to stop myself. "This is my business." "Since when is my dick your business?" I seethed. Roman's blue eyes flashed with the first sign of anger. "Since you decided to fuck the opening act? You know that's rule number fucking 1? She's not the opening act yet. She hasn't even auditioned. You know we'll pick her just because she's a wolf." My stomach twisted because deep down, I knew how Dell would feel about that. I shook it off as best I could. "Okay. How does that affect me?" I asked, as I folded my arms across my chest. The glass in Roman's hand cracked down the side before he shoved it away. "I don't know why I have to spell this out for you more, but I will. If you put your dick in her today, and she goes on tour with us tomorrow, that's going to cause a big fucking problem for us." I opened my mouth to speak, but he kept talking. "She's going to get attached because she's a female and that's what they do. And because you're Theo Moore, you're going to turn right around and shove your dick in someone else the first chance you get. Do you know what happens then?" "No, but I'm sure you're going to tell me," I deadpanned. "Then I get to spend the next 8 weeks with some whiny bitch crying over your stupid ass. We have the rules for a reason. No fucking anyone on tour. You know this." I did know this. Hell, I'd created the rule after our drummer Walker almost knocked up a roadie. But this was different. Dell was different. I just didn't want to fuck her. I wanted to know her. I couldn't say that to Roman, though, so I just shook my head. Yeah, I muttered as I turned toward the stage again. Just as I did, a gasp rang out from the crowd, and I looked up at Dell as she tripped on the steps leading to the stage. I jumped to my feet, ready to sprint up there and catch her my damn self, but she regained her balance at the last second. A small smile spread across my face as I watched her stand up straighter and strut toward the microphone. "There's something wrong with your stairs," she said, her smoky voice instantly making me hard. The people around me laughed with her, and my smile grew. She was clearly born for this shit. Her bright blue eyes scanned the crowd until they found me, and I swear my damn heart almost jumped out of my chest. Dell's red lips spread into a wide grin, and she was so fucking gorgeous in that moment I wished I could freeze it. My eyes stayed glued to her, just like everyone else in that room. I didn't need to look to know the entire venue was as hypnotized as I was. Every sway of her hips, every toss of her wavy hair was so effortlessly attractive. It was like she oozed sex appeal from every single pore, and there wasn't a person in that room who didn't want her. I could guarantee that. She pulled out an old acoustic Taylor and turned back toward the mic. The leather strap went over her neck as she grabbed the stand and pulled it toward her lips. "Hey, y'all," she said, her voice echoing off the walls and sending chills straight down my spine. "This is Blank Space." Dell plucked the opening notes of the Taylor Swift song quietly for a moment, her head ducked to watch her busy fingers. When she finally looked back up, there was a twinkle in her eyes. She opened her mouth and started singing, and my entire world shrank down to just one point. Just one person. My eyes felt stuck open as I watched her lips move and her hand alternate between strumming the chords and tapping out the beat on the belly of her guitar. This song wasn't easy to play live, and especially solo. But she handled it with ease. If I didn't know better, I would have thought she'd spent weeks practicing. The truth was, she'd just chosen it on a whim. Before I knew what was happening, I was moving, my heavy leather boots dragging me forward as my gaze stayed stuck on the goddess performing on stage. "Remember the rules," Roman's deep voice rumbled behind me, but I ignored him. Nothing mattered but Dell. I couldn't see anything but her, couldn't hear anything but the sweet notes falling from her sweeter lips. When I finally made it to the front of the crowd, Dell grabbed the mic, letting her voice and the steady tap of her fingers on the guitar bring us through the bridge. The beat got faster as she sang louder until she hit the crescendo, and she stopped playing. I don't think one soul took a breath the entire time she sang that one long note. It ended as fast as it started, and Dell started playing again, effortlessly finishing the song and then shooting a wink at the audience. Pride pumped through my veins as I glanced around the large room and found every pair of eyes focused on her. When I looked back, her cheeks were pink, her blue eyes shining as she thanked the crowd and packed up her guitar. My feet started moving again, and I didn't even question when they led me backstage. "More!" someone called as I passed by. I spared them a wave, but that was all. I needed to get to Dell. I needed to see her and smell her and fuck. If I could just get one goddamn finger on that woman, maybe I could finally relieve this ache in my chest. A secondary wave of applause sounded from beyond the curtains, and I smiled because she deserved it. She was easily the most entertaining act we'd seen all day, and there was no way she wasn't getting this spot. Which meant if I wanted to fuck her, this was my only chance. Roman's warning sounded in the back of my head, but it was quiet. Something told me Dell wasn't like other women. That if we agreed to a single night, we could both be mature and leave it at that. Fuck, I hoped I was right. The heavy fabric was finally pulled aside, and she appeared at the top of the stairs, face still beaming and chest heaving. She hadn't seen me yet, so I had the pleasure of watching her rush toward the steps and then think twice about her haste. I barely held in my chuckle as she gripped the railing and took one cautious step at a time. By the time she made it down, I'd had enough waiting. I was there, just off to the side of the staircase, so when she twisted her ankle on the last step, I was close enough to catch her. "Whoa there," I said as I pulled her upright. Dell gasped softly before her blue eyes met mine. "Theo," she whispered, her breathing more labored than it was before. The urge to pull her closer was so strong, but I resisted. There was no telling who could see us or who would report back to the band, which meant we needed to get out of here. "What are you doing?" she asked, as she pulled out of my arms and broke my train of thought. I cleared my throat to grant me an extra second to think, but nothing was coming to me. No smooth line, no quick comeback. All I had for her was the truth. "I wanted to see you." Her eyes widened, and I hurried to continue. "After you're said, I wanted to get the chance to tell you how incredible you were." Her lips twitched with a smile. "Yeah?" I felt an answering grin spreading across my face. "Fuck yeah. That was amazing. You really didn't practice that song before coming here?" She shrugged, her smile growing. "I mean, I played it a few times, but not recently." I took a step closer. I couldn't help it. She was so captivating with her flushed cheeks and luminous eyes. It was like she was glowing, and I was a helpless moth, attracted to her light. "It was so fucking good," I said, my voice softer now that I was so close. "You were easily the best one here today." She raised a brow. "I thought you killed it," she said, doing her best to imitate my deep voice but failing. A chuckle fell from my lips, the sound too strained to be happy. Hopefully she didn't notice. "Of course I did, but you were better." Dale rolled her eyes, but she was still smiling. "Okay, well, thanks," she said as she turned. My pulse pounded and my throat clogged as I watched her take the first step away from me. Already it was too much, too far. I was nowhere near ready to let her go. "All right, folks," a familiar voice boomed through the PA system. "That's it for today. Callbacks will be tomorrow." I silently thanked my manager for the assist and caught up to Dell. "Hey, so it sounds like you're from around here," I said as I fell into step beside her. She glanced at me out of the corner of her eye. "Yes," she said slowly. "I am." "Great. I'm just in town for a couple of nights, and I've never been here. Where's good to get a couple drinks and some pizza or something?" Dell pursed her lips to the side as she thought. "Well, Upcountry Brewery has some pretty good pizza." "Is there dancing?" She shook her head like she hadn't heard me. "Dancing?" I smiled. "Yeah, I like to dance." Dell pressed her lips tight together to stop her smile, but there was no hiding it. "You like to dance?" she asked, disbelief coloring her tone. I took a step back and crossed my arms over my chest. "Why is that so hard to believe?" Her eyes darted to my thick biceps and the tattoos that peeked out from underneath my t-shirt. When she glanced back at me, there was a heat in her gaze I recognized, and it took everything in me to stop myself from touching her. "You just don't seem like the type," she finally said, her voice breathier than usual. "And what type is that?" Her gaze was still heated, but also too intuitive as she looked me up and down. It felt like all my secrets and lies were laid bare before her. like there was nothing I could hide from Dell. So...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?